Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sportsballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sportsballers podcast. I'm Evan Ash, joined as always by Corey Puffett and Eric Meyer. Today on the show, we've got certainly a lot of NBA to get to. Some stuff happened in baseball this week. There's a little NFL discussion, but we're going to start with Tiger Woods getting in a car accident yesterday, and as he's been horribly injured, but with non-life-threatening injuries, apparently a compound fracture in his lower leg and then another leg injury. So we're certainly wishing him the very best, and hopefully he's not dealing with any sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this
I don't have any other words.
this is clearly a very significant injury. Everything that I've heard is that they don't believe that any of this is life threatening, but it sounded like he was recently starting to think about whether he would or wouldn't continue his golf career, but this injury is likely going to be something that's going to prevent him from really having a choice in the matter. To be honest, I mean, when you're talking about a compound fracture and a shattered ankle is what they said. Now, I don't know if, some people, the definition of a shattered ankle isn't like broken into pieces, but that's what I'm like. It's that sort of like sickening imagery that is like in my mind when I think of a shattered ankle. I'm thinking like this is like a repair would be miraculous. Really sad for him that this kind of potentially takes that choice out of his hands. I'm glad that this doesn't appear to be life threatening. I hope that remains the case. And I hope that he recovers quickly.
Yeah, I think that if this results in Tiger Woods never being able to play on the Pro Tour again, obviously that's not the way you want to have your career end, but if we never see him play golf again, that's okay. I just want to be able to see him on his feet again, being able to walk, being able to live life like a normal human being and not be, constrained to a wheelchair or something like that for the rest of his life. If he's able to do that, then, that's a relief to me because, we just had what happened to Kobe Bryant happen 13 months ago. And this was eerily similar to that when the news broke about this car accident, when you see the wreckage from the vehicle and you see how far it went down that hill. And my reaction was just like, oh my God, how did he survive this? And will he survive this? And, like you said, like Evan and Corey both said, it seems like as far as, moral peril doesn't appear to be at hand here. It seems like Tiger is going to be able to recover from this accident. He's already out of surgery and recovering for the leg injuries that he sustained. As far as golf goes, who knows? Obviously, that's a completely different question. But I mean, again, he gave all he had to golf anyway. He's been in the sport forever. His legacy is set for that. But he needs to be able to get back on his feet for his family, for his son, for his his friends, everybody that knows him. Tiger Woods still has a lot more to give as a man, and it looks like he's going to be able to. And I think anything else that comes from it, whether it means cutting his golf career a bit short, I think in the end that's okay. That's fine.
The concern that I would have at this point is, we've become a lot more aware recently, especially because of Alex Smith's recovery, of the risks involved in compound fractures, and even having surgery and recovering from it. We saw Darius Geis as well. Both of them suffered from multiple infections during the process of having surgeries on their injuries. And so something like that, you have to worry, and hopefully the doctors are being very vigilant about that, because that's a severe risk.
Well, sure, but we've seen a lot of players and just individuals in life deal with injuries serious like this, and they've been okay. So I'm not going to, worry about that. I'll let the doctors handle that. But this seems like something that he could recover from and get back to a place where he's at least mostly what he was, professional athlete aside, like that.
Right.
That's like I said, that's just not relevant right now. It's the same thought I had anytime you see an injury like this. Like, I remember back when Cam Newton got into a car accident and somehow he barely even got hurt. That was insane because his car
played
flipped
like
over.
2 weeks later.
Yes, he did. And I was like, how the hell is he even out here? But when I first heard that, I was like, I don't give a damn if he plays football again. I just want to see him, alive and on his feet. The football stuff, that's secondary. We worry about these people as humans first. And I think that, like I said, this all the stuff that's happened in the last year, just it changes your perspective on things like that. Like if this happened 2 years ago, my reaction might have been, oh man, Tiger's not going to play again. Now I'm just like, okay, it looks like Tiger's going to be okay. That's the most important thing. That's what matters the most. And if this is how his career ends, I mean, he's still Tiger Woods. Doesn't change anything. He's still a legend. So,
yeah, absolutely. I want to move to the Australian Open tennis. I'll admit I watched absolutely zero of this. I didn't watch any of it. I have no idea.
To be fair, most of the prime matches were played at like 3:30 in the morning throughout the 2 weeks, so it's perfectly understandable. Long? All the majors are 2 weeks long.
Oh,
in tennis, yeah, it's 2 weeks.
They have like 5 or 6 rounds to the tournament at least. Like
7.
Like 7, yeah.
7 if you don't include qualifiers, but qualifiers aren't usually on TV. So
I thought it was like a week long.
No, that's most tennis tournaments. Most tennis tournaments are a week. Majors are 2.
Oh,
there's a reason why at Wimbledon they call it the fortnight.
Well, I thought they were just being obnoxious.
Well, they are being obnoxious, but it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, but it's also accurate. Okay. So I did. I mean, obviously Eric, watches his fair share of tennis, so it's no surprise that he's caught up. I actually watched some of the later rounds. So I watched most of Djokovic's championship game, his championship match, and then I watched both semifinals on the women's side, including kind of like the big one, which was Naomi Osaka against Serena Williams. Main reason for watching it was because Rashonda was really interested in seeing it, in particular for Serena Williams, who was chasing a tie, at least for the record for the most Grand Slams, and it's so the current record holder is Margaret Court, who has 24 of them. Williams is at 23, and I mean, like it or not, time is running short. There was some conjecture after the match that this might be Serena Williams' last time in Australia, which was like, I mean, these reporters are probably just saying this to kind of stir things up and because they can't help themselves. But the press conference that Serena Williams held afterwards certainly didn't do anything to quell, the thought that this might be her last time down under. Eric would be able to tell more about, are hard courts tougher on aging athletes than grass and clay? Could Serena take multiple more shots at Wimbledon and the French Open, or not? And I'll let Eric, maybe kind of ponder about that a little bit. But Margaret Court, a known racist, a known homophobe, Somebody who
Oh,
it would
lovely.
be really nice to see her record get broken, and especially by Serena Williams, a black woman, would be great. From that standpoint. So we were watching it for that, and it was a really fun match. I mean, Osaka she controlled that match pretty much from more or less from the beginning. Williams had a few good games within the match, um, but I mean Osaka swept 2-0, and she was a sniper out there. Just her ball placement was amazing. It was so much fun to watch her play. Um, Obviously, a little bit disappointed that Serena didn't win from that initial standpoint, but Osaka's a fun player to watch. I'm definitely going to be watching more of her in the future.
Yeah, I watched this match as well, and um, Naomi Osaka is the first player I've seen on the women's tour that's been able to actually, bully Serena Williams on the court. I've never seen that happen before. Normally, when
Interesting
Serena
word.
lost, it was because Serena had a bad day. There's no such thing as a player that could outplay Serena when Serena was at her best, or even, somewhere near her best. Like, it was just a matter of physics. She was so much physically better than everybody else that it required her to be either off mentally or just something just isn't firing right for you to overcome her. And of course, you'd still have to play the game of your life too. So, but with Osaka did not play her best match in that game. She got a little bit antsy in some of the big moments. She had a lot of double faults. She struggled to get her serve in, which kind of kept Serena in the second set at least. I believe Osaka double faulted away a break. I think she had 3 double faults in that single game.
I think she had 7 or 8 over the course of the entire match.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So, especially for such a relatively short match, it wasn't like there were a ton of service games for her to be doing that. So she clearly was feeling the pressure a little bit, but it didn't matter because she was still able to get it together enough so that she wouldn't be the one that had the mental breakdowns, and she just overpowered Serena. And this is how it works in tennis. It's not that Serena Williams is no longer good. Obviously, she's still a great player, and she probably could be this level of a player for another 5 years. The issue is that typically somebody shows up who's in the prime of their career, and another great player in their prime is going to beat you when you're not in your prime. And so those players typically force people like Serena Williams out of the game. It happens on both sides, both men and women. Typically, when the next big guy comes along, he's 25 and you're 35, he's going to end up whooping your ass. And that's kind of how this went. Now, that doesn't mean Serena can't win another major, because Osaka's going to have off games where she might lose a match. I mean, Serena Williams didn't win every single match under the sun in her prime, so there's no reason to think Osaka's just going to sweep everything. But it certainly seems like if Serena gets matched up against Osaka, Osaka's going to be the prohibitive favorite every time, and Serena's going to have to make something special happen in order to win that match.
Serena Williams is 39. So
Osaka is now 16-0 in the quarterfinals and later in Grand Slam tournaments.
Yeah, so it seems like once she finds her form and gets to the business end, it's lights out.
Yeah,
that's just where she is right now. I mean, she's clearly the best player in the world. I don't care what the rankings say. Like, the rankings get a little bit. I got no issue with the tennis rankings because it's an objective score. Like, it's based off of how you do across the world.
But this year is a little bit weird with the coronavirus and some athletes opting out of some tournaments while others don't, and so that kind of changes the points.
Sure, and then when you factor in injuries and other things like that, things can get a little bit out of pocket, especially if you're a player like Serena Williams, who right now is probably focused mostly on the majors. You don't really give a damn if you lose or don't even compete in some of these lower grade tournaments, which cost you points. But she's clearly the best player in the world. She's an incredible athlete. I'm excited to see how far she goes as well. So credit to her indeed. And Corey, you mentioned about hard courts. Hard courts are tough on athletes as far as the grind, because it's such an unforgiving surface. You can understand the physics of it. Like, it's like running on blacktop versus running on grass or on dirt. It's the dirt and the grass has got a little more give. whereas the hard court is more, abrupt, and it's not going to be easy on your joints.
So my question then would be: do grass courts and or clay courts are they harder on players in other ways, maybe from the lateral movement side, and not so much the impact, the direct impact?
They can be. If you've watched Wimbledon, especially in the first week or so, you see a lot of players slip on that grass because it's a little bit more slick. And the clay court requires a little bit of savvy on it because there's always a bit of a sliding factor when moving side to side. It's something that players adapt to. You don't usually see people fall on the clay courts, but there is a level of understanding of you're going to move from where you plan to stop a bit. So you have to account for there's going to be a slide and you have to get back. Which is,
I would have thought that I could see that with grass. I kind of thought that clay would be a little bit more like grippy, like almost like you're running on top of like tape or something, where like when you plant your foot, you'd be more concerned about your upper body continuing its momentum and you like turning an ankle or something. I didn't realize that there was like a slip to it on clay.
If you watch the French Open, it's clay, but it looks like they're playing on dirt. It's not hard clay.
Gotcha.
It's very much. In fact, for a long time at the French Open, until recently, they didn't even have the Hawkeye challenging technology because they didn't bother, because you could see the marks on the dirt from where the ball hit. So if a challenge happened, the chair umpire would just come look and say, "Yep, ball hit right there. That ball was in or out."
Interesting. Okay. Oh.
So I don't know how that would affect Serena Williams. I don't think she's physically compromised. I don't see any reason why she couldn't compete on the hard courts. I think that her best shot at winning is probably Wimbledon because grass courts are unique. They're not heavily played upon, and she's got a lot of experience, obviously, playing on grass because she's played at Wimbledon 20 times. So there's a little bit of an edge there. But I don't see any reason why she couldn't compete on hard courts. I think that winning the French Open is going to be tough for her with her style of play because she's such a powerful attacking player, and the clay is sort of built for people who run side to side a lot and have a lot of endurance. And a 39-year-old woman, going up against prime athletes is going to have a harder time winning that war of attrition on clay versus the other surfaces where she can kind of hit through the court a little bit more.
Do you happen to know how many times Serena has won the French Open? I'm assuming she has.
Of course, yeah, she definitely has, but I would assume it's probably her least successful major.
Okay.
But again, she's more than capable of winning there because she's phenomenal. I mean, just like on the men's side, Roger Federer's won at the French Open, and so is Novak Djokovic. So I'm looking at it now. Serena Williams has won the French Open 3 times.
Okay.
So she's won it a few times, but obviously
still, I mean, that means that the other 3 have accounted for 20 of her major wins.
Yeah, she has 7 wins at the Aussie Open, 7 wins at Wimbledon, and 6 at the U.S. Open. So the other surfaces clearly are more favorable to her style of play.
Gotcha.
Which, again, makes sense because players with as much power and as much attacking ability and athleticism are probably going to be better off playing on a surface that's a little bit quicker, whereas the clay slows things down and gives, more fleet of foot but not quite as powerful players more of a shot. And so it creates an advantage for people that love to sit on the baseline and just return everything and hope the other player makes a mistake.
Is this similar to like when the Colts had their high-flying offense and they'd have to go to New England when they had a grass field and it was cold and rainy in Foxborough, and like they would just be slowed down by playing in the mud, basically?
I love that question because you are making all kinds of excuses for my man Peyton Manning.
That's not a good excuse though. You got to be able to win anywhere at any time. But it is similar though because styles make fights, and if you're in an arena that suits your style better, you're going to have more of a shot to win. And tennis is all about that. That's what tennis has been about. It's less so now because, frankly, they've slowed down the hard courts and they've slowed down a little bit the grass at Wimbledon to sort of homogenize the surfaces a little bit. But it still has a pecking order where, the clay courts are still the slowest courts playing among the group of them. It used to be that somebody like Rafael Nadal or Novak Djokovic could never win Wimbledon because it was just way too fast. But they decided to slow that down because they wanted to have more rallies, because rallies are more exciting than just watching somebody, serve and volley and 2-shot points.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this was also Dan Duquette's thinking when he's running the Orioles and we're gonna only have home run hitters because our ballpark is small. That's all we're gonna do. We're not gonna pitch or field or run. We're just gonna swing for the fence, and if it doesn't go over the fence, we'll just sit back down. On to the Association of National Basketball. They announced their all-star teams. Didn't think that was that funny. But...
I mean, I didn't think it was that funny either, but I did notice you went out of your way to say of national basketball when we normally just call it the association. But proceed.
Anyway, I'm going to have you proceed because I haven't been watching this either.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they announced the all-star teams. I've heard of most of them except for Nikola Vucevic.
That's pretty good pronunciation. Yeah, you got it right.
I have no idea who that is.
Vucevic is a big man. He's a forward for the Orlando Magic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
The more you know.
The only one I don't know is Giannis. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I was going to say, stop it. I was very proud of myself that I didn't have to look up how to spell his last name when I punched that in there. I knew it because I was like, okay, it's like learning how to spell Jimmy Garoppolo. Is it 2 R's or 2 P's? It took a long time for me to get that one down. So
Roethlisberger. that one took me a little while to get.
Yeah. But okay, so I guess I'll talk about this or something. Okay. So the starters were voted on by the fans. It was 2 guards and 3 front court guys. So in the Western Conference, Stephen Curry and Luka Doncic were voted in as the starters, and the front court guys were LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Nikola Jokic. LeBron James gained the most votes among Western Conference players, so he will be the team captain because it is not West versus East. It is Team LeBron versus Team Kevin Durant, who was the leading vote getter in the Eastern Conference. So those two will exchange picks to decide their team. They'll pick among the starters first to determine who their starting lineups will be, and then they'll pick among the reserves after that.
Interesting that LeBron had the most votes out of the Western Conference when their highlight videos, as you showed us earlier today, Stephen had 3 times as many views on his highlight tape than LeBron did.
I mean, I don't know. Just because you like somebody's highlight tape a little bit better and you're more excited to watch their doesn't mean you're necessarily going to vote for them. Plus, LeBron's got a media machine behind him. He's got Clutch Sports and Nike and all kinds of stuff on his wagon. So, I mean, there's just the way the voting – I'm not going to get caught up in that. This isn't an election. We already had one of those, and it got annoying. So I'm just going to trust
it annoy you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
A little
bit.
I
was filled with existential dread, but, annoying is fine, too.
Well, I was speaking more to the complaining about the votes after they were counted and certain individuals had won and the other individual had said, stop the steal. I'm not going to say stop the steal for the benefit of my boy Stephen Curry here. He was still voted in as a starter. That's fine. So an interesting, not really omission because he was an obvious choice as a reserve. It was sort of a 3-horse race for 2 slots as the starters for the guards with Steph, Luka Doncic, and Damian Lillard. And I probably would have put Dame ahead of Luka. But at the same time, I think Luka's a better overall player, and I think Luka's going to be a better player by the end of the year. And I tend to lean more towards that when I decide who I vote for All-Stars. I vote typically for the guy I think is better, not just the guy who's had the best 30-game start to the year, because it's 30 games. Like the most annoying thing to me when I look back at previous All-Star games is when I see people that made the All-NBA team, but they didn't make the All-Star team. Because we said, hey, after 30 games, we're picking All-Stars, and we just ignored this guy. It's like, no, come on. Like we decide who gets into the Hall of Fame based off of the All-Star game. So this should mean something more than just I had a hot start to the season.
So
it should mean home field advantage in the finals.
I disagree with that. Personally, I think that the All-Star game, and I get that your argument that we base part of our decision on who makes the Hall of Fame on the All-Star game, but maybe that shouldn't be a factor, because to me, the All-Star game these are the best players to this point in the season. That's how it should be in basketball. That's how it should be in baseball, in my opinion. Football is a different thing because it's happening at the end of the season. You already know everything. You know who was the best of the year.
Not at all.
But to me, in the NBA and in Major League Baseball, you should be rewarded for having a great start to the season. If you end up tailing off in the second half and somebody else usurps you, they get the All-NBA honors, which also is taken into consideration when you're talking about the Hall of Fame at the end of a career. So I think I don't look at it as, oh, we're snubbing this guy who we know is good but has been worse than this other player who is not as good in the long run. We should be giving it to the guy who's had the better start, the better first 30 games or whatever it is, in my opinion.
Well, I normally would agree with you there, except we're not talking about people that have been better. They have bigger numbers. There's a difference. You can't determine who's better after 30 games. That's not a thing, unless somebody's just having an awful season.
Well, but that's but that is all we have to go on at this point is the numbers. And so if you have
then don't go on it. That's a stupid idea. Don't go on it. Go on who's better, because you know who's better. It doesn't make sense to do it any other way. If you know somebody is an extremely impactful player that has been perennially a top 15 player, and then you have somebody that had a hot 10-game stretch that make their numbers look pretty good, and so all of a sudden, oh, who do I want to play in the friggin' All-Star game, which is, by the way, for the fans, so we should want to have the best players there, not just, hey, this guy had a nice start to the season, let's put him on the team.
So I'm reminded of Ubaldo Jimenez a little bit in this discussion, frankly, because remember, he had that great start to the year, which was apparently 2010. I'm trying to see if he started the All-Star game that year, but y'all stopped arguing a little sooner than I thought you would, so I can't find that information right now. But I don't know if he started that All-Star game or not, but he didn't win the Cy Young Award that year.
No.
That's the point I'm getting to.
No, he did not.
So I don't know who did.
2010 was Roy Halladay.
Oh, okay. In NL?
Yeah, he was with the Phillies.
Okay. Corey's got his
face palm. I watch the Major League Baseball All-Star Game most years, and there are occasionally years where a player is on the field who I barely know who they are, and the only reason I even know their name is because they've been putting up all these great stats at the beginning of the year, but they've never done this before, and they wind up never really doing it again. I'm still happy to see that guy get that chance. For me as a fan, and I get this is not all fans. I can't speak for all fans, but for me as a fan, I enjoy that. I get a kick out of that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that a guy can not generally be a great player, but have a really hot, somewhat sustained success. I get that 30 games is very little when you take into account the length of an entire season, but that is almost half of a season. It is sustained enough for me to believe that they deserve that shot at being in the All-Star game and getting that recognition for that particular year.
So, okay, I understand what you're saying, but my point is not to say that good players don't deserve to get rewarded because they might stop being good. I'm saying that guys like Julius Randle, who are averaging 21 points a game, there's so many other factors to determine what your numbers are other than you being good in the NBA. In baseball, if you can hit, you hit. That's it. Like, if you're hot, whatever, but you did it all yourself. There's nothing on the field that makes you a better hitter if you're in a different lineup or in a different system, because there is no system in baseball. Everybody goes to the plate and does the same thing. You can have inflated stats just because, hey, I'm in this new system where I get to take 25 shots a game. And to me, I think that at that point, I don't really know how good you actually are. So in those instances where it's close, I'm going to defer to the better player.
Well, sure. I mean, you can look at player efficiency numbers and you can see, what is his field goal percentage? If he's taking 25 shots a game, what should he be scoring versus what is he scoring. So you can, but I guess my question then would be, looking at Damian Lillard and Luka Doncic, and specifically Damian Lillard, since he's the one who got quote unquote snubbed, right? He's not a starter, he's on the reserve list. What would you is he playing better basketball? Not just does he have better numbers, but is he playing better basketball? Does he have higher efficiency numbers? Is he better right now than Luka Doncic through the first half of the season? Is he playing better basketball right now than Doncic is?
I would say no, but it's very close.
Okay, that's
it's very close.
That's fair. If the answer is no, that's fair. If the answer, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, it's extremely close. Like, this is not something that I'm not going to sit there and say, hey, this guy, I think he might be a little better than you in actual real life, but it's really close. At that point, I'm going to give the guy that has the better numbers. I'm going to defer to the stats somewhat. It's not like I completely throw it out, but when it's something like, okay, Jimmy Butler is clearly way better than Julius Randle, right? And even this year, he's been way better than him in terms of how much impact he's had. But because he missed a handful of games due to COVID, people kind of said, hey, let's forget about the Heat because the Heat stink. They did the same thing to Bam Adebayo, who was also way better than Julius Randle. Both of those guys got left off the All-Star team this year because of reasons that had nothing to do with how good they are. It was because Julius Randle was having a nice season for a somewhat surprising Knicks team that is actually 500. And to me, that doesn't make Julius Randle better either in the first 30 games or in general than either of those two guys.
Ubaldo did start the 2010 All-Star game. He gave up 2 hits in 2 innings.
And I got no problem in baseball with it. I just think that in basketball there's so much to parse with it that I'm always going to dig deeper than just the numbers, because sometimes the numbers don't tell the truth. And in situations where it's ambiguous, which it is often, that I'm going to say, okay, but I know this guy is way better than that other guy. Even right now, I know that's the case. So I'm going to use my prior knowledge.
Yeah, that's all fair. It just, the way that you presented it initially sounded a lot like, it doesn't matter if LeBron is playing worse basketball, right? His efficiency numbers are lower than, Donovan Mitchell. I mean, I don't know what position Donovan Mitchell plays, so I don't know if they would be, but regardless, then, I'm still going to make LeBron James the starter over him in the All-Star game just because I know that he is better from a career standpoint. I don't think that's right. If Donovan Mitchell is playing better basketball, he's got better efficiency numbers, all that, he should start over anybody, in my opinion.
And I'm inclined to agree with that as well. It's just a matter of, like I said, there's so many moving pieces in basketball where somebody's efficiency numbers might not look that good, but that's because they have to take literally every hard shot the team has because nobody else can score. So there's so much to weigh in.
Sure.
And a lot of that requires some type of sample size to determine, is this guy good or is this just kind of, happening because of noise? And that's when I start to say, okay, what have they done before? What's their past look like? So that's kind of where I am with that. And let me be clear, I don't think anybody here wasn't deserving of an all-star selection, and specifically the starters are voted on by fans. So that's totally up in the air. That's not qualified people picking. That's just everyday Joes like me voting on fans. And I'd like to think I know more than most, but I don't know more than everybody. I'm certainly not an authority on it. And most people are less knowledgeable than me. So that's just the way it goes, because ultimately it is a product for the fans. But I think the 3 forwards were obvious. LeBron, Kawhi, and Nikola Jokic. Those guys are LeBron's probably the
forward.
Yeah, he's a small forward.
Oh,
yeah,
but it was a guard.
No, but those guys are clearly the 3 best front court players in the West. No dispute there. So for the reserves, you had Anthony Davis. He's probably going to be replaced because he's still dealing with that Achilles injury. So it'll be interesting to see, because for all the whining about who got snubbed, because I generally don't do that with who got snubbed off the team, because it's always so hard to – my rule is, if you're going to complain about somebody getting left off, okay, you got to explain who you're going to take off the team and replace them with. And normally people can't do that because it's like, oh, crap, this is a lot of good players because no duh, they're the all-stars.
Right.
It's like every time you hear somebody say, oh, that guy's a top 10 player, I'm like, okay, name your top 10 then. And all of a sudden you end up with 14 guys in your top 10. I'm like, no, it's reserved to 10. Like you get 12 guys per conference here. That's it. If he's not in the top 12 in the conference, he doesn't make the team. Sorry. But so I think that the Western Conference, the coaches pick the reserves, and I think they did a really good job here. The only one that's sort of up in the air to me was Donovan Mitchell, who plays for the Jazz. The Jazz have the best record in the league. They have the best point differential in the league. They are looking the part of a championship team in the early going, but again, it's early, so we'll see how it goes, and we'll also see how that translates in the postseason. But Donovan Mitchell is the leading scorer on the Jazz, so the leading scorer on the best team in the league is generally going to get preferential treatment. I don't mind seeing him here. I thought that maybe Mike Conley on the Jazz was a little bit more impactful for them, but that's splitting hairs. Plus, Mike Conley's just suffered an injury too, so he might not be able to go anyway, so the point could be moot. Evan, your boy Rudy Gobert made the All-Star team. Hopefully he won't shut down the season again.
Please. Because he didn't just shut down the NBA, he shut down life as we know it.
God, that was a brutal 4 months.
That was the inflection point when everything changed.
Yep.
And it hasn't been the same since.
Absolutely. Playoff P made it. He's been terrific during the regular season, notably not in the playoffs, so we'll see what he does later on.
P.
Yes, he's regular season P right now. And then Chris Paul made another All-Star selection. I think it's his 11th All-Star game. He said it was a bit bittersweet because he thought that his boy Devin Booker, who's also on the Suns, got snubbed basically by him. Like he feels like Devin Booker should be on the All-Star team, and so he's kind of salty. It's like, well, I feel like I'm taking his spot. But I disagree with that. I think Chris Paul's been the more impactful player for the Suns. I mean, Paul's a guy that everywhere he goes, the team wins, regardless of whether they're supposed to or not. So, and he goes to the Suns and instantly they're a top 4 team in the West after being sort of a playoff fringe team last year who ultimately didn't get in. And, Devin Booker's missed some time. He's had a nice season, but he scores at a decent clip, but that's it. Chris Paul does so much more on the floor for them as the floor general, and everywhere he goes, the team defense gets better because he just has a leadership quality to him, along with his drive and his basketball IQ to make the team better defensively as a unit. So I disagree with Chris Paul that Devin Booker belonged on this team when I look at the other guys on the list. And last notable one is Zion Williamson makes his first All-Star selection. Zion has been, especially the last few weeks, has just been outstanding. He's taken on a new role sort of as the point forward, if you will, for the Pelicans, where they're putting the ball in his hand and letting him initiate the offense because people just cannot stop him when he puts the ball on the ground and he drives to the hoop. He's so big, athletic, such a fluid finisher around the rim. And, he's scoring 25 a game on better efficiency than Steph Curry. So, that's an all-star. Like that, period, end of story. So, plus
something better than Steph Curry, I think you're doing pretty well.
Yes, particularly when it comes to scoring efficiency, because that's like Steph's like the greatest ever at that. So, he's been fantastic, and plus he's a really exciting player. I'm excited to see him in the All-Star game because I'm sure he's going to catch a whole bunch of wide open alley-oops for some sick dunks because that's what they do for the first 3 quarters of the All-Star game. So, that'll be nifty for sure.
Is there a difference in, I don't know if it's the words prize money, but the amount the guys get paid for winning the All-Star game?
I don't know if they've upped that. I know that the proceeds for what happens is going to go towards HBCUs. Okay. So there's a charitable aspect to this. But I think last year they implemented a new system where the fourth quarter was played, and I don't know how the first 3 quarters factored into this, but it was basically like 1st to 24. It was not a timed quarter.
So it's the first to 24 more points than the leading team has. So if it's if it's 54 to 25 at the end of the third quarter, you're basically playing to 78.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
checks out.
Yeah, okay, so Corey knows what's up. That's the way it worked last year, and it was freaking awesome last year because you're watching the best basketball players in the world going all out, trying not to let that person score that last point when they were getting up to it. It took forever for it to play out, and it was kind of sad that it ended on free throws. Like that shouldn't be a thing. That feels wrong. Like this is a glorified pickup game. Play it like a glorified pickup game. You commit a foul, all right, check up top. Yeah, that's how it should be.
Oh, you check the ball.
That's
not,
what I'm not.
it in.
No, they inbound the ball, but I'm saying that's how it should be. It's just like side out, throw the ball in, reset it. Like no ending the game on free throws, but it's basketball. They had to call the foul, but it made it really exciting. It was fun to watch. You know, you had people drawing charges in the NBA All-Star game. Like, when the hell have you ever seen that? So,
seemed like what they should do is also in the fourth quarter, just send the referees off. Just get rid of them too. Make the guys call their own fouls and travels and whatnot.
That would be a disaster.
Yeah, you got to have some type of objective third-party officiating here. You can't rely on people.
Who was the guy? There was an NBA player, I saw it on the highlights, who hit a step back three, but like took 4 steps to get from like the free throw line to behind the 3-point line.
I mean, James Harden makes a habit of that. So
no, but this guy, he was on PTI the other day. Like he did, it wasn't even. Tony said it wasn't a Euro step, but a Europe and Asia step.
Oh well.
That's how many steps he took. But maybe it was Donovan Mitchell. I don't know.
Maybe. So I'll move to the Eastern Conference. We'll get through these pretty quickly. Starting guards are Kyrie Irving and Bradley Beal. I mean, I probably would have put James Harden in the starting lineup ahead of Bradley Beal, but he also had a weird start to the year where he was tanking with the Rockets and he was fat. So I kind of get saying, nah, you're not going to start when you've really only played 10 games with your new team looking good, whereas the first half of the season, or first half, the first 10 games or so, you were loafing, you weren't even showing up. Yeah.
He was over at the Golden Corral near my apartment that just reopened. That's what he was doing.
Yes, he was.
Large and in charge.
But, I'm happy to see Bradley Beal make the team. I think that given the fact that the Wizards are so awful and that Beal's kind of been forced to be the guy on a crappy team, like I said, I don't know if he should be starting, but he definitely would have been on my all-star team, at least as a reserve. So, who cares? What's the difference?
No Russ?
No Russ. Sorry. Try again next year.
Too bad.
Yeah. The front court guys, as I mentioned, Kevin Durant is the leading vote getter, so he will be the captain, the second captain of LeBron James. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Joel Embiid round out the starting lineup. All well-deserved. No beef with any of the big men. So the reserves, I shared an interesting tweet where only one team in the league has multiple All-Stars and a losing record, and that's the Boston Celtics, because Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, whose praise I sang, I believe, 4 weeks ago when I did my State of the NBA, talking about how great they were playing. Well, they're still great, just the rest of the team is terrible. So they're both reserves. Jaylen Brown is one of those guard reserves, and Jason Tatum is one of the forward reserves. And then, as I mentioned, James Harden is among the reserves as well. And then we get some interesting choices because, like I said, I feel like the Miami Heat players got left off, not because they weren't playing well, but because the team wasn't playing well. And that's sort of my biggest pet peeve with the way the coaches select the team sometimes is they oftentimes defer too much to the teams or the players on the best teams, not so much the best players. Because I don't think you can justify Julius Randle or Nikola Vucevic ahead of guys like Bam Adebayo. That just doesn't add up to me. But, I mean, it is what it is. Those guys are having good years. Zach LaVine made it for the Bulls. He's played really well. I don't really have a big problem with that. I'm actually glad that Ben Simmons made the team because I think that he's gotten a lot of heat for being unable to shoot the basketball.
From you.
Particularly on this show.
Yes, I criticize him quite a bit, but that doesn't mean I don't think he's an all-star. He's still a really good player. And so he was rightfully selected, I think. And I think that's everybody.
Yeah, it is a shame not to see Jimmy Butler in the game.
Yeah, and again, Jimmy, another beef I have a little bit with is just like the focus on, he missed time. Well, it's a COVID year. I mean, that's going to happen. And again, does it really matter that he missed 10 games? He's still awesome. Like, it's not like he's played like crap in the other games. He's been fantastic. So
he's one of the very few players in the NBA. I mean, there are a lot of great players in the NBA, but he's one of the very few who can actually like completely take over a game by himself.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. And he's another guy where, despite what you hear about his attitude or whatever, everywhere he goes, the team wins. Like, he managed to make the Bulls competitive, and we've seen what the Bulls have been since he got traded. They've been terrible, even with Zach LaVine. And
the Timberwolves, who are
the Timberwolves made the playoffs.
Franchise.
The Timberwolves made the playoffs one time since like 2004 when Kevin Garnett was there, and that one time was when Jimmy Butler was on the team. In fact, the Timberwolves were not just in the playoffs, but when Butler was healthy on that team, they were a top 3 seed in the West. And then he suffered a knee injury, and the air went out of the balloon for the Timberwolves, and they ended up as like the 7 or 8 seed, and ended up getting, gentlemen swept, I think, by the Rockets in the first round of that postseason. But they were looking really good, like a team that could potentially make a run to the conference finals. They certainly weren't going to beat the Warriors that year or the Rockets, but they could have maybe gotten lucky if somehow one of those teams picked each other off early. But yeah, that team looked great with Jimmy Butler on it, despite the fact that they look absolutely woeful since then and have only gotten worse. They might end up being the number 1 picking team again this year for the second straight year.
Again?
My goodness.
Yeah. So yeah, Jimmy Butler is that dude, because it's not just about, like, Corey, you mentioned the fact that he can take over a game, but oftentimes his numbers don't look that great. Like, he doesn't really have big numbers. He seems like he's invisible on the offense, but he's still impacting the game so much because of what he does defensively, because of what he's able to do as an initiator on offense that oftentimes doesn't even lead to assists because he makes the pass to the guy who makes the pass. But he's still...
We don't get 2 assists like we do in hockey.
Yeah, there's no hockey assists. Like, there's a reason why people call them hockey assists that actually track them, but they're not official stats by any means. But, he's a guy that, like I said, he's on the court, the team's competing, no matter who's around him. Like, there's a reason why he dragged the third stringers off the Minnesota bench and then kicked the crap out of the starters before doing his interview with Rachel Nichols about why he wanted to get traded. So, we know why, Jimmy. We just saw what you did. Like, you want to get traded because the starters are terrible. But he's great. I wish that he could make this team, but unfortunately it just didn't work out this year, especially because a big part of the reason is the sample size is even smaller. Normally it's about 40 games before you settle on All-Stars, but because of the weirdness of the season, like, we're not even halfway through it and we're already picking All-Stars.
I mean, the NBA's been weird since Rudy Gobert ended everything.
Everything, yep.
Yeah.
So one last note, Quinn Snyder of the Utah Jazz will coach Team LeBron. Snyder is the coach of the Jazz. He coaches the Jazz. The Jazz have the best record in the West, so he's one of the coaches. And since the
walked in here right now, I was like, who are you?
That's
what Quinn Snyder looks like.
He's a scary-looking dude.
In my life.
Yeah.
I thought the Jazz's coach was Jerry Sloan. So.
Jerry Sloan retired years ago.
Okay. I think he passed away, too. Actually.
Yeah, he also died recently, so there's that. He's already in the Hall of Fame. He's been retired long enough to be in the Hall of Fame. So, and so since the Sixers have the best record in the East, Doc Rivers will be the coach of Team Durant.
The Sixers have the best record in the East, not the Bucks or the...
Nope. It's the Sixers. It's the Sixers. They're good.
Okay.
They're good. Yeah. I think that's it for All-Stars. I don't think I have anything else.
No. So you mentioned how the Timberwolves have been to the playoffs. They went to the playoffs when they had Jimmy Butler, and then you said when they had Kevin Garnett a long time ago. One team that hasn't been to the playoffs since then, your Seattle Mariners, Eric. They made the news this week.
What a transition.
Yeah. Bam! your Seattle Mariners.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is a segue.
Yes, indeed. So anyway, the Mariners, their now former president started running his mouth recently, and he said several quiet parts out loud, and he said several ignorant parts out loud.
So first of all, can somebody explain to me what the hell a Rotary Club even is?
I looked that up today. It's apparently a club of like businessmen who apparently do charity work or something. It just sounds no different from a country club, frankly.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, he was speaking to the Rotary Club or a Rotary Club, and he just said a bunch of stuff, just a verbal vomit, if you will. So he accused Marco Gonzalez, the Mariners starting pitcher, of being very boring because he doesn't throw hard. So Marco Gonzalez went on Twitter and changed his Twitter bio to say "very boring."
Well done.
Yeah, that is 100% real.
Why has Joe Flacco not changed his bio to dull? I want to know that.
He is dull, right?
That's true. It's a little too on the nose. This is being done ironically. Fair enough.
Let's see. The Mariners' former president's name is Kevin Mather. So he resigned, I think, on Sunday for all this stuff. It gets worse.
Worse.
He's also said their top prospects, Gerald Kelenic and Logan Gilbert, will likely not start the season with the team as a way to manipulate their service time and keep them under club control longer. So Major League Baseball has this thing where, like, if you keep a player down in the minors for like the first month or so of the season, you get a 7th year of control over that player.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this utilized multiple times over the past 5-10 years or so. I mean, one of the most notable ones, of course, was Chris Bryant with the Chicago Cubs. But nobody has admitted that is what's going on. I mean, we all knew it. Like the players know that this is being done. The fans know that this is being done. But this is the first time somebody's actually like saying it out loud.
Yeah, so that was saying the quiet part out loud. Now let's get to the ignorant foolishness. Outfielder Julio Rodriguez apparently, quote, has got a bigger personality than all of you combined. He is loud. His English is not tremendous.
So,
Mr. Mather, why is his English relevant to his baseball playing ability? Or his personality or anything? Like, you just had to throw that in there for fun or something. A
lot of this, I don't know if either of you have seen this, but Rudy Giuliani went on some show, I think it was like on Newsmax or something recently. And
oh, God. Forgive me for not watching Newsmax.
Well, no, I don't blame you at all.
Why are we talking about this? What are we doing?
So he told this story that was supposed to be this really super funny story that had to do with Rush Limbaugh, because Rush Limbaugh just died. And it was, they were playing golf with Michelle Wie, and there were a bunch of like paparazzi taking photos, and they realized that the reason was something to do with Michelle Wie. And he's like trying to make this huge joke about it. And amazingly, neither of the other two people on the show thought it was funny, because they were the type of people I would have thought would have cracked up at it. But it reminds me of that. Like, this guy is out here telling this story about a player who has a big personality and his English. So what? Why does that matter? Why are you telling this story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's. I don't know why you told that story, but anyway.
Yeah.
I don't really get it.
I wanted to liken this guy to Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, okay.
Well,
he's that much of a clown, I guess.
So
maybe not quite that much of a clown. Giuliani's next level, but
the only thing I've learned from that is that Michelle Wie needs to find better golfing buddies. I mean, my goodness.
Amen to that.
Playing with those people. I mean, one of them's thoroughly underground now, and shame. But
Damn.
so some interesting things here. It's like it felt like, because I read the entire transcript of this thing, just because I was like, what? Why was
Evan's
this guy
got
doing
more.
this? Well, it seemed like he was trying to almost like, he's trying to sell the Mariners as a competitive organization to these rich people or something like that. It was
so
bizarre.
Competitive with all their trips to the playoffs in the past 2 decades.
Yeah, the one time they made the playoffs in the last 20 years, which was 20 years ago.
I was going to say, you haven't been to the playoffs in the last 20 years.
Yeah, like 2001 was the last time. So, but it almost felt like an athletic director for a college meeting with the boosters. Like that was the vibe it got, where it's like he's rubbing shoulders with these rich white guys and trying to sell the team as like, we got this guy and we got that guy. And he mentioned something about Kyle Seager, and he said Kyle's in his last year with the Mariners and that'll be it for him, basically. And so Julie Seager, Kyle's wife, tweeted, "So should I put the house up for sale or what? Like you're just saying we're not going to be back with the Mariners next year?"
Well, wait, because in Evan's show notes here, it says that he said that Kyle Seager would be the future, would be a future Mariners Hall of Famer, but also was overpaid. Okay, so I guess that's different. I misread it as he would be the future of the Mariners, but also was overpaid.
Well, the funny thing is Kyle Seager was not overpaid at all, because they got him on a similar type of deal to Tatis, except for obviously not nearly as much money, where they bought up his arbitration years, and he's only making $14 million a year, despite the fact that he's still an above-average third baseman.
But how is he going to be a future Mariners Hall of Famer if he's not going to continue to be with the Mariners?
Well, because he's been with the Mariners for over a decade, and he's been good.
Sure.
I mean, Manny Machado's going to be an Orioles Hall of Famer. He's only here for 6-7 years.
I mean,
seems kind of weird to
Roberto
me.
Alomar's an Orioles Hall of Famer. He was only in the Orioles for 2 years.
What?
He's an all-star. It is not a big threshold to get into a team's Hall of Fame, Corey.
Okay, well, if that's the case,
everybody can be
fine.
the Yankees, where you've got Mickey Mantle and Babe Ruth, and you can have these huge high standards. It's like, nah, if you make a couple of all-star games with the Orioles or the Mariners or the White Sox or whoever, you're in. Like, that's the way it works.
Yeah, but that makes it feel like if like it would be okay if Kirk Cousins was in Washington's Hall of Fame because he made a Pro Bowl, or if he made a Pro Bowl when he was with us. I don't remember if he did. But if he had made a Pro Bowl with us, would that put him in our Ring of Honor? That sounds ludicrous
the Washington
to me.
football team has an extensive history of having really good players for, like 90 years at this point. So like that, the threshold is a moving target in that sense.
It's not like the Orioles have nothing to look back on and be proud of in their history.
Well, since I've been born, there's been a whole lot of nothing. But before that, there was stuff.
Okay, but since I was born, there's been a whole lot of nothing in Washington with the football team.
I mean, I feel like, I don't know, it's a different standard, though. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that's the way it is. Like, baseball Hall of Fames are not that hard to get into. It's funny because the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is probably the hardest Hall of Fame to get into among the big four sports. But the individual team Hall of Fame is like the easiest. So it's like, how does that work?
Fair enough. Okay.
Like Melvin Moore is an Orioles Hall of Famer, and he made one All-Star game.
He should be an Orioles Hall of Famer.
I agree. He definitely meets the threshold. But
how come J.J. Hardy's not in the Orioles Hall of Fame? What are they waiting for?
I think he will be. I think he'll get in.
Will Ubaldo
Adam
be
Jones
in there?
isn't in yet.
No, Ubaldo will not get in there.
Will Ubaldo be in the Rockies Hall of Fame?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I mean, he made an All-Star game. He was pretty good for a short time with them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
but he's also Ubaldo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the White Sox had Esteban Loaiza start an All-Star game for them when the White Sox were hosting it.
Now, regardless, all of this fairly supports Kyle Seager being in the Mariners Hall of Fame, whether or not his career continues with them. Moving on.
Right. The point is, Kyle Seager's easily good enough to get in. He's really good. Like, he's a really good player for them.
And more importantly, getting back to Mather, because that's really the topic at hand here.
It took me a second to remember.
That was a huge tangent.
That's what we do.
We're bringing it back. So we talked about Kyle Seager. The reason this is relevant is that Kyle Seager has a club option in 2022. So the former team president has already announced that option won't be picked up. They haven't played the 2021 season yet. So, they already announced, yeah, you're gone. Goodbye. Oh, boy. And then it gets worse. So Hisashi Iwakuma was a former pitcher for the Mariners, and he was rehired.
This was arguably the worst of them, of the comments he made.
No, it's not arguable at all. This is it. This is the worst one. So Hisashi Iwakuma was a pitcher for the Mariners. He was rehired recently as a special assignment coach with the club. So Mather said, quote, "For instance, we just rehired Iwakuma. He was a pitcher with us for a number of years. Wonderful human being. His English was terrible." Of course, that's relevant. He wanted to get back in the game. He came to us. We quite frankly wanted him as our Asian scout/interpreter. What's going on with the Japanese Baseball League? He's coming to spring training, and I'm going to say I'm tired of paying his interpreter. When he was a player, we paid Iwakuma X, but you also had to pay $75,000 a year to have an interpreter with him. His English suddenly got better. His English got better when we told him that. So yeah, this is absurd, guy. Is the team really that cheap that they can't pay an interpreter $75,000? The team that makes $1 billion a year doesn't have an extra $75,000 in the couch cushion somewhere.
So I'm very I'm confused about the last part of that, because he seems to be indicating a couple of things. He seems to be indicating that Iwakuma was purposefully trying to make it seem like he couldn't speak English very well so that he could have an interpreter. And then he, out of the goodness of his heart, decided, I'm going to drop the act and speak good English so that the Mariners don't have to pay for an interpreter. And then you're going to go and trash the guy in front of your Rotary Club.
Well, what's happening here is that Mather so this Rotary Club is a bunch of rich white guys who own businesses or run businesses. So he's bragging about how he's screwed over one of his employees, basically, and this is expected to be seen as a good thing by these other rich white guys who I would assume are also screwing over their employees in various ways. So, he's bragging about, well, we saved all this money. He was also in the conversation earlier, he was bragging about, how little money the Mariners have spent in terms of paying players on the Major League club, because they're not trying to win. I don't know what they're actually trying to do, because they're not in tank mode either, like the Orioles are. So they're just existing. What's going on with the Major League club? So, this is the most damning thing. So it's kind of a shame that this guy didn't get fired, that he resigned.
Right.
But, it is what it is. Eric, this was your team. What do you think about this?
I remember I found it pretty laughable that he brought up the money for the interpreter at $75,000 when Iwakuma signed with the Mariners. He was making $14 million a year. So, not exactly a huge chunk of change for
$14,075,000.
Yeah, I'm really crying poverty over the damn interpreter. Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. And I kind of had a slightly different interpretation from Corey with regards to when he was criticizing his English and saying he suddenly got better. I didn't take it as him saying that Iwakuma secretly knew English the entire time. I felt like he was calling Iwakuma lazy, like he wasn't willing to learn English until we told him no interpreter, and then he had to figure it out. Either way, it's terrible. It's an awful thing to say about somebody who, I liked Hisashi Iwakuma when he was a Mariner. He was a really good pitcher for the team. He was the second best pitcher behind Felix for a good number of years when Felix was in his prime. So he certainly wasn't a reason why the team didn't make the playoffs. He did his part, but I just found this so ridiculous. And the thing is, when you combine it with what he said about the other player that couldn't speak any English. It seemed like it was a thing. It was a pattern
Yeah,
with this dude.
it's a xenophobia thing. I also am bothered by, he started the whole rant about Iwakuma was saying that he's a wonderful human being, but then he's going to go and criticize all this stuff about him, and it has the feel of when you say, no offense, but, and that
the Simon Cowell,
like the thing that comes after the but is inevitably going to be offensive, but you're going to say, oh, but I said no offense, and so it's all good. It's the same thing here. He's going to be like, oh, but it's already off the table. I already said that he was a wonderful human being, so how could you take all this as negative? Because you're being xenophobic, because it's a negative.
It reminds me of all the times that John Elway would refer to Tim Tebow as a fine young man when Tebow was playing for the Broncos, and Elway was really biting his tongue because he really just wanted to say, this is the worst quarterback I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Like that's what he really wanted to say, because that's what Tebow was. He was a disgrace at that position. But he's a fine young
drafted
man.
Paxton Lynch. So
yeah, clearly John Elway doesn't have the greatest eye, but anybody and their mother could see that Tebow couldn't play unless you're blinded by the light of whatever your creed is that says that Tim Tebow is secretly football Jesus. But he's not.
Dick LeBeau or Ike Taylor in the playoffs.
Yes. That was not awesome.
I was overjoyed when that happened.
I
was so happy.
I enjoyed it too. It was a lot of fun. But when you get I could almost buy it if he was basically saying, we don't like our players to have interpreters. That's just another guy in the building. That's stupid, but it's not out and out, xenophobic. But when you bring up this other guy, it's like, yeah, he sucks at learning English. It's like, you clearly are making this about the fact that they don't speak English, which means you're being a xenophobic dick, which is what he was being. And I feel compelled to mention the fact that the best player of the Mariners in the 21st century was a man who played there for 10 years plus and had an interpreter the entire time. Ichiro always had an interpreter. And guess what? That dude could speak English. He just didn't want to have to deal with the media potentially misconstruing something he said because it's not his natural language. So there's every reason to have an interpreter in a situation like that to protect yourself from some potential gaffe because you're speaking a different tongue.
Yeah, learning to speak English is difficult anyway. English is a very strange language when you're not growing up learning to speak.
It's a strange language when you are growing up learning it.
That is true, right?
Yeah, you
learn
the
words laughter and daughter, for example, come to mind.
Or you learn I before E as the rule, and then you find out there are way more exceptions to the rule than the words that actually follow the rule. So, throw that on the fire right there for why English is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, a friend of mine spelled the word subtle, S-U-T-T-L-E, and that made me laugh a little bit. Like, what? So, but the interpreter, like, for example, if English isn't your first language and you're doing an interview or a press conference or something, and like you're not super familiar speaking English, your words could be easily misconstrued or taken out of context, or like you could sort of you could say a sort of phrase that you think means one thing, but it actually means something else that's not exactly what the words say, that type of thing. So I think this is absurd. And like there's a good percentage of Major League Baseball players who are born in another country and maybe they don't speak English. I think that's great. I think that's good for baseball. When
I was
if speaking a different language is the biggest barrier you have in your organization, not that you don't win any games, Seattle Mariners, not that. Nobody ever complains about that. You never complained about how much they suck for 20 years. He just doesn't speak English. Obviously, that's
I get so frustrated by people who get upset about they can't speak the language I speak. Well, why don't you try to learn to speak the language they speak? When I ultimately, if I was to ever switch from teaching to, sports talk as a full-time thing or sports analysis, my preference would be to be in football. But if I was ever going to be in a situation where I was covering baseball, and this had been my plan back when I was a teenager and was thinking about this as a potential career, my intention has always been, if I'm ever covering baseball, I'm going to do my best to learn Spanish, because there are so many Spanish-speaking players in professional baseball. And, for those who learn English, great. Good for you. Kudos to you. But I'm also not going to fault you if you choose not to, or if you just struggle to learn it. I'm going to do my best to try and learn Spanish, and I might fail. I might just not be able to pick it up, but I'm going to try. Alex
Bregman learned to speak Spanish to better communicate with his teammates.
Yeah, I think that is great. I think that is so much cooler than a Spanish-speaking person coming here and learning English.
Oh, yeah. There was a Red Sox color analyst who got suspended because there was a meeting out on the mound, and he was complaining that the pitcher got to bring his interpreter with him in addition to the pitching coach. And he talked about how the pitcher needs to learn baseball language. And the play-by-play.
So wait a second. They speak English in the Korean baseball league. They speak English in the Japanese baseball league. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the guy needs to learn baseball language.
They speak English down in the Dominican Republic when they're playing baseball. I don't think so.
So the play-by-play guy was obviously shocked. He's like, "What?" So the color analyst was suspended.
Was it on the spot the same way as Tom Brenneman was?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, that was a whole different situation. That was xenophobia. That was homophobia.
A lot worse.
But still.
Good Lord.
Nick Castellanos gets a fly ball. 4-0 Reds.
I just want to take this time to apologize as we got a home run here in the stadium. Are you kidding me?
Nick Castellanos hits a deep fly ball to left field, and that's going to make it 4-0.
I mean, sort of like Rudy Gobert, this Nick Castellanos being sort of unfortunately involved in the situation. Like, this is what he's going to be remembered for.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, but Castellanos didn't decide to be a part of that. Gobert made a conscious decision.
Well, Gobert got the coronavirus. I wouldn't say that was really his fault.
Touching all the microphones.
The getting it was not his fault. The touching them in the first place was his fault.
The antics with the touching of the microphones was weak sauce and lame. But he got sick from probably in the locker room. Yeah. From somebody else. That's just life when you're dealing with a pandemic. So, but yeah, this was out of control with this Mather guy. I mean, I don't understand why the Mariners didn't fire him right away. It's not like you're holding on to some savant baseball president who's just been
and this was not his first infraction. Success. This was not his first infraction.
This isn't the worst thing he's done.
There were allegations that were made by 2 former female employees that of harassment, and the organization just kind of they made amends with the former employees, and we've taken appropriate discipline, we've had sensitivity training, we've done whatever other corrective actions are implied by that quote. So that was even worse than all of this. And they still didn't end up firing him. They still didn't end up firing him after either of these 2 incidents. So that tells you, I think, all you need to know about the Mariners organization, at least at this point in time.
Who was the Mariners owner? I thought it was Nintendo.
I think Nintendo sold their stake.
Okay.
They're out from under the Mariners. They're probably can't have this.
Yeah, we need to own teams that go to the playoffs once. Even the Orioles have been to the playoffs somewhat recently.
3 times.
Right.
Like I honestly thought that back around 2007, I thought, the game of baseball simply would not allow the Orioles to make the playoffs because they were in the same division with the Red Sox and the Yankees, and those teams were perpetually good because they had all the money. And then,
then Tampa Bay gets good.
Tampa Bay suddenly wins the division and goes to the World Series. And I'm like, oh, wait, so somebody can actually win this division that's not the Yankees or the Red Sox? I was like, okay, maybe this could work. And then Eventually, the Orioles got good, but the Mariners they can't get out of their own way. They're just a horrible organization. They were
to put this in perspective, the Minnesota Twins have lost to the Yankees in the playoffs 6 times since the Mariners have been in the playoffs.
And lost to the Yankees.
Well, that too. I wasn't going to go there.
Yes,
that wasn't really the point.
That happened.
That wasn't really the point, but yes, thank you, Evan.
Jeez.
All right, so good riddance to this Kevin Mather guy. You won't be missed with your, xenophobia and general greedy obnoxiousness. Less of that in the world would be appreciated. That is my take anyway. On to baseball being played on the field, because some of that is coming up very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Mancini is 100% ready to play with no restrictions after he missed all of last season with a stage 3 colon cancer diagnosis.
Really
so that is great to hear.
Yes.
There will be fans in attendance for the first spring training game. The Orioles open up Grapefruit League play this coming Sunday, February 28th at 105 versus the Pirates. I have no idea what TV channel this is on. There's a whole thing with Masson not bothering to cover spring training games because they just don't feel like it, I guess. So we'll see. But they're actually going to play baseball. And Trey Mancini is going to be out there too, so that's great. Sure, next week I'll have some updates on what actually is going on with the Orioles, because they're currently just like playing catch and wearing sunglasses and jogging lightly and stuff like that.
Stretching.
Yeah, stretching. Don't forget the stretching.
Stretching. Yeah, I remember those days playing baseball where it's like the first few weeks you're just running around and stretching, and it sucked. It was so boring.
So boring.
It was so boring. I was like,
stretching does suck. Stretching is very boring, but it's essential.
Yeah, it is.
I really learned to appreciate stretching last year because it actually did keep me healthy a lot longer than I have been in several years when I've tried to get back into running. But when I was younger, I was like, this sucks. I hate this.
Yeah, when you're a kid,
I just want to run.
Really
I just want to go and
either.
do whatever my sport is, whether it's running or shooting a ball in a hoop or hitting a ball. I just want to do it.
But you have this thing called athleticism, though. Like, you have talent. So those of us without talent, you gotta get going a little bit.
Well, even somebody who has talent, stretching is important because it prevents injuries. Like, it's a preventative measure that you're doing. Like,
when you can just
doesn't
get up and go,
But you can't, because honestly, the more it's weird putting it this way. The faster you are, let's say, right, for a sprinter like Usain Bolt, the faster of a sprinter you are, the more important stretching is, because since you're so fast, there is a much higher risk of tearing something if your muscles are not properly stretched out and warmed up. Somebody who's slow as molasses doesn't, not to say they don't need to stretch, but they're not putting the same strain on their muscles, and so the risk of injury is significantly lower whether they stretch or not. Stretching will certainly reduce that risk even more, but their risk is already very low.
Eric is yawning, by the way, and reclining in his chair. Don't you have a sandwich to eat or something?
He already ate it.
No, I still got another piece of it.
Jesus.
Yeah, I got a giant
still got some of that
from
Pepsi
Jimmy
left.
Mike's. Yeah, I got.
Yeah, and a Pepsi. So, Corey, the Yankees, what's the latest over there?
Yeah, so I'm going to try and be a little bit better this year about having specific updates on the Yankees week to week, because last year
watch the games.
Well, I usually start the season watching a lot of the games, and I sometimes tail off a little bit.
Yeah, after a week, you're like, that's enough.
I'm going to try to at least, even like the weeks when I maybe don't get a chance to watch as much, I'm going to try and do some research and be able to do an update for this. So, last week I said I was going to update everybody on our pitching situation. There's not really a ton to tell. Garrett Cole is going to be the ace this year. He was really good last year, had a little bit of a tough stretch early on. He was tipping pitches. But overall, in 12 starts, he won 7. He had an ERA below 3. He had an ERA below 3 in the postseason as well. We brought in Corey Kluber and Jameson. Is it Talon or Tyon?
I think it's
Talion.
Talion.
Talion. So Kluber had a shoulder strain at the beginning of last year with the Rangers. Only pitched in one game and was shut down for the season. Talion is coming back from his second Tommy John surgery. And they're probably going to be the number 2 and 3 pitchers in our lineup. So I hope they pitch well, but that doesn't exactly make me feel great. You know, 2 guys coming off of severe injuries that made them miss significant amounts of time. Jordan Montgomery is probably going to be our 4. And I had high hopes for him when he first came up, because one of the things that really was fascinating about him was that every single one of his pitches, fastball, changeup, curveball, they all have a completely identical release point. And that makes him potentially really effective. But that hasn't actually panned out in the numbers. Last year, he had an ERA above 5 in 10 starts. It's not good. His field or independent pitching, his FIP was adequate. It was under 4. But that ERA definitely makes me nervous. So I'm willing to give him a chance this year, but I don't expect a whole lot. So the big question comes down to the 5th starter. Davy Garcia, I think, is the favorite. He's a young guy in our minor league system, is coming up. Michael King and Clark Schmidt are in the conversation. But now Domingo Germán is also in the conversation, and that is kind of the big topic this week for me to talk about with the Yankees, because partly because he gave a press conference today, but the lead up to that press conference was all kinds of mismanaged, and in particular, in my opinion, by Aaron Boone. I'm really upset with the way that Aaron Boone handled this situation. For those who are not up to speed, Domingo Germán was suspended because of a domestic violence allegation. I mean, we know that he did it at this point. And he sort of, I guess, has admitted as such, but in his press conference today, he was kind of shady about what he basically just, apologized to the Steinbrenner family, apologized to the teammates, apologized to the front office, said he made some mistakes he's not proud of, and then that was pretty much it. So he didn't name what he had done, which I mean is typical. I mean, that's how these go. So I'm not surprised, but it doesn't make me feel that much better about the potential of him coming back. It doesn't make me feel much better about the team giving him a second chance. That press conference was supposed to be on Monday, and it was postponed so that he could talk to his teammates. When Boone first brought Domingo Germán back from the suspension, back to the team from the suspension, initially he didn't think that Germán needed to address the team directly. But then Zach Britton, and I really appreciated Zach Britton doing this. I mean, obviously you guys like Zach Britton as a former Oriole. But I really
bobblehead is behind me.
Yeah. I really
two
appreciated
good ankles, by the way.
Yeah, my Zach Britton bobblehead has 2 good ankles in a crinkly box because it got rained on.
I kept the box under my shirt the whole time.
I did not do that.
Deluge.
And anyway, so Zach Britton on Thursday of last week said in part, you can't choose who your teammates are. And then kind of went on to say, I don't agree with what he did. I don't think it has any place in the game on or off the field at all, which I agree with completely. And apparently after those comments, Aaron Boone said that his antennas went up, as if your antennas should not have already been up because this is a guy
this happened
who
like 2 years ago.
beat his girlfriend.
Are your antennas just now going up?
Like, are you kidding me on that?
Uh-huh.
So Boone said, I'd say it's put a little strength in my antenna as far as something that I'm looking at more closely. I'm not ready to say Domingo has to address the team at this point. That's something that has to be authentic and come from within, but it's something I'm paying attention to because it's a serious issue. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. It should come from within. I agree with that 100%. It should come from within. But if Germán is not being proactive and saying, I need to do this, get him the hell off of my team. If he can't even address his teammates directly, personally, face to face, and he's going to offer some weak ass comment to the media, sort of half-ass apologizing for his suspension, get him the hell off of my team. I want no part of him. To his credit, he did ultimately talk with his teammates face to face. I think he addressed them as a group, and he addressed at least many of them face to face. Luke Voigt said, he'll be there for him, but doesn't condone it. He messed up, and a lot of guys look at him differently now. Voigt also says that he believes in second chances, and the guy deserves a second chance. I'm a little bit on the fence about that. I think that there are some things that just you don't do. You just don't do it.
Some stuff's unforgivable.
But I get the sentiment of wanting to offer him a second chance, and if Voigt feels comfortable giving him a second chance, that's fine. I think that there are some players who probably are a little bit less forgiving. And I think there are some fans who are less forgiving, myself included. So, at this point, I kind of have to accept that Germán is back from suspension. He's in the conversation for that 5th starter spot. And if he's able to pitch anything like he was the last time he was on the team, he's probably going to get it and probably be even higher in the rotation than that. I'm not happy about that. I think that I don't think that he has apologized adequately, and I'm very disappointed in the way that Aaron Boone handled all of this. And I like Aaron Boone. I generally have liked Aaron Boone. I've been fine with his hire. I've been fine with him as a manager. This was botched, to say the least. So, Yankees will play their first spring training game this Sunday at the same time as the Orioles. They'll be playing against the Blue Jays, but that's all I've got to say about that this week.
I don't have anything to add that you didn't say. I agree this is horrible. So I also agree. I wish Aaron Boone had handled this a little differently, more proactively and stuff. Talking about how his antennas are just now going up. Like, you should have been on the highest alert when this news first came out. When was the incident? When did that happen? That's when
I don't even
Aaron
remember,
Boone's
but it was sometime.
up.
It was sometime during the 2019. I think it was during the season in 2019.
Well, didn't he do it in front of team officials?
What? Well, no. So he and his, I think she was his girlfriend or his. They were, I think, at home by themselves, and the girlfriend called a teammate, and I don't know who the teammate was. I tried to look in the articles I saw that didn't name him, so maybe we just don't know. But the teammate and his wife went to their residence. The wife was with Germán's girlfriend, and the teammate was trying to calm down Germán, who was apparently still belligerently angry by the time the teammate got there. So I don't know. I don't remember exactly where it happened, but I'm pretty sure it happened during the 2019 season because I believe he got suspended before the year ended.
Oh, okay. I don't understand what Aaron Boone said then. Like, I'm looking into it. It's like, you should have looked into it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. You don't have any other baseball stuff to add? I guess that was the meat and potatoes. We got some NFL drips and drabs this week as well. Something big happened since our last show, so I'll just start there. Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of yammering about Carson Wentz on all the first take type shows. Dan Orlovsky, who's madly in love with Carson Wentz. I think Dan Orlovsky's great. I really do. He's a good analyst, but I think he's just got a bit of a blind spot in terms of Carson Wentz and his
a lot of people
complete
do.
Inability to play football.
So
suddenly.
does Colin Hurd. Or Coward. Colin Coward.
Yeah, well, I don't listen to him. That's Eric's boy.
The point, though, is that a lot of people seem to have this blind spot with Carson Wentz, and I can't for the life of me understand how.
I can understand how.
The dude is not good.
Yeah, he sucks.
He's a 6'5" white guy. That's it. There's your answer. That's it. That's why people think he's great. He, quote unquote, looks the part. That's it.
I mean, but you have to look the part by also playing well. It's not like that actor that got famous, that GIF that went viral of the guy who's, playing a football player in a show or whatever, but he can't actually throw the ball.
But the thing that confuses me about Colin Cowherd is that he was so critical of Carson Wentz over the silliest thing, wearing his hat backwards in a press conference. And Colin Cowherd is the type of guy that once you're on his list, he has no leniency with you, and yet he's out here just full-fledged love fest with Carson Wentz this week.
Well, as a guilty pleasure Colin Cowherd follower, he's been, like you mentioned, Corey, that once you're on his bad list, you're stuck there. But it's kind of the same on the good list too, where he's been all over Carson Wentz since he was a rookie. And if you don't remember anything about Carson Wentz's rookie year, it wasn't that good. Like his rookie year, he wasn't that good. Like he showed some potential. And then the second year, he had, what looked like it could have been an MVP season. But I don't get why people are trying to – I got people on TV saying that this makes the Colts a Super Bowl favorite or like a favorite to win the AFC. Yeah, he said that, but I've heard it other places too. Emmanuel Acho said it on Speak for Yourself on Fox. And I'm like, what is the fascination with this guy? I don't understand. He was literally the worst quarterback in the league last year. And we're trying to say that upgrading, I use that term loosely, from Phillip Rivers to him is somehow going to take them from a one-and-done wildcard team to winning the AFC?
Let's just say, for argument's sake, that Frank Reich is, in fact, the Carson Wentz whisperer. And Carson Wentz ends up, actually being good next year. Let's just say. Does that actually make them a Super Bowl contender? Because I would argue it doesn't really make them, certainly not a favorite, and probably not even a contender.
Does it get them past Tennessee in their own division? I think maybe.
Maybe at best.
But they're not getting past Buffalo. They're not getting past Cleveland.
I don't think they're getting past Cleveland. They're not getting past Kansas City. No, absolutely.
Yeah. It was because the Colts are a good team. They've got a really good defense and they've got a good running game. They're well coached, all that good stuff.
Wentz would have to be far above and beyond even my best case scenario that I'm thinking.
He would have to be a Pro Bowl level player, and by Pro Bowl I mean top 3 in the conference in order for them to be a serious threat to win the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Because those other teams just simply have better quarterbacks and better teams.
Right, and even then it might not be enough because, you've got at least three other really good quarterbacks in the conference, and better weapons around a lot of them.
I don't doubt that the Colts, again, good roster, but the thing is, why are we acting like Phillip Rivers was bad last year? He played fine.
He was surprisingly good. I was hating on Phillip Rivers all year, or at least through the first half of the year, because he was so bad in in Los Angeles in 2019. He had a good year, and he sustained it throughout. Right.
Yeah, so I mean, the amount that you can gain from acquiring a new quarterback in this situation
is marginal.
It's marginal unless you're acquiring somebody that's amazing, like a Deshaun Watson type of player.
Or if Manning comes back.
Yeah, or if Tom Brady says, I'm going to go win one with the Colts now, then we could have a conversation. But Carson Wentz has not earned nearly enough in the NFL to deserve that kind of benefit of the doubt. To assume that this last season was somehow just an aberration due to a collection of disastrous incidents with bad receivers, bad drafting, a weird coaching situation where he hated Doug Peterson, yada, yada, yada.
Well, all that stuff is true.
Yes, but the reality
happened, but Wentz sucks as well.
The sample of Carson Wentz being a bad quarterback is about 3 times bigger than the sample of him being a good quarterback. So why in the hell would I assume that just because he's reuniting with his former offensive coordinator, that suddenly he's going to be the good quarterback again? Because not only was that one season, just based on compared to the others, looking like an outlier, if you look at the numbers from that season, it was already built to be an outlier. He was so lucky that year. He had unbelievable performance on third down, unsustainable in the red zone. We knew he wasn't going to be that. His completion percentage was bad. His yards per attempt was under par, or over par if you're talking golf, whatever. He was below the standard there.
I think under par works fine.
Yes, he was not good enough in those stats, but he had a lot of touchdowns because they had a ton of success in the red zone. That was the entire mirage of Carson Wentz's great season. You look at DVOA, they said, yeah, he was pretty good. They didn't say he was an MVP, not even close. And that was when he had an incredible offensive line. He had a slew of good weapons with Alshon Jeffrey, a functional Nelson Aguilar, and in the prime Zach Ertz. So I mean, they had a full squad there. And then what happens? Nick Foles, who has proven to be a thorough bum, won the Super Bowl and played better than Carson Wentz ever did the entire year when he played the last 2 playoff games. They built a statue of Nick Foles.
And Doug Peterson.
Like, that team was so good that they were willing to build a statue of a guy they got rid of who can't start anymore and a dude they just fired less than 3 years after he won the Super Bowl. So what does that tell you about what was around Carson Wentz at the time? He had it made in Philly in 2017, and when things got just a little bit hot for him, he melted down. And that's what bothers me most about this, is that if Cam Newton behaved like Carson Wentz when Cam Newton was young and up and coming, he never would have played another down of football in his life. He would have been persona non grata for being a toxic football player, because that's what Carson Wentz is. But he's getting other chances because of various reasons. People think he's good because of the way he looks. He looks like a prototype, so they assume he can be salvaged, when in reality, he just looks like an immature brat.
That's succinct. Yeah, I don't know what all these people see in Carson Wentz, right? Like, you can have all the advanced stats and stuff, which apparently say he sucks, but just watching him play football also say that he sucks.
Yeah.
Like the first game against the brand new Washington football team back in week 1, remember that 1,000 years ago? The Eagles were up big. What was it, 17-0? And then in the second half, Wentz is slinging picks all over the place. Where are you throwing the ball at, man? Hello? The guy is right in front of you. He takes a bunch of sacks because he just holds the ball and is looking. You're just, it's like he's playing badly on purpose. That's how bad it was.
I won't forget, it was the Sunday night game where the Cowboys played the Eagles and Ben DiNucci started. And Carson Wentz had a play where he rolled out and he just was just standing there near the sideline, looking downfield, not throwing the ball, not throwing it away, not tucking and running, just holding the ball for a solid 2 seconds before the rusher came and hit him when he decided to throw the ball and he got stripped. And you guys probably have noticed that typically during national broadcasts, the announcers tend to root for the quarterbacks on both teams. They don't like to see them suck. Like when
stars.
Yeah, right? when Ben DiNucci was making a couple of good throws, Chris Collinsworth was really chalking him up. He did the same thing with Brock Osweiler a couple of times when he was on TV playing in front of
Taylor Heineke.
Yes, this is what the announcers do. They want to build these quarterbacks up. And even on that play, Chris Collinsworth was just like, this is just an awful play by Carson Wentz. Like, how could he do this? And I was like, yeah, I saw the same thing. What was he doing? I mean, if you got Chris Collinsworth just dogging you on the broadcast, you suck. Like, that's all there is to it. You're a bum.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, Doug Peterson got fired, and I'm sure there are other coaches that left or got fired that are, partially to blame. But, Carson Wentz, this is on him, right? It's really his fault that he didn't play well. What else is there? He got paid all this money. when you're the quarterback, you get extra credit when there's success. You get extra blame when there's failure. So, his receivers sucked. His line was injured. His coach was an idiot. But still, you have to play well, and he did not.
I'm also I'm tickled pink by Nick Sirianni coaching the Eagles now, because they literally brought him in the hopes that somehow that would repair their relationship with Carson Wentz. And he shows up to the press conference stammering and having no idea what he's doing there and just talking like a complete idiot. And
We're
then
make this
Carson
so
Wentz says,
simple,
"Yeah,
but
you have to trade me anyway."
It's going to be complex for the defense to read, but simple for us to understand, because when we play it simple, what are you talking about?
It was he was just babbling. And I was like, really? You hired this unqualified dude to coach your team in the hopes that somehow you would repair your relationship with your so-called franchise quarterback, and then the so-called franchise quarterback says, "Yeah, I don't care. You're going to have to trade me anyway."
They're going to have to eat a cap hit of like $31 million.
Oh, my goodness.
On the salary cap that's going down next season, by the way.
The Colts were the only team that made an offer for Carson Wentz. Like, nobody else was interested. Not even the Bears.
Teams?
Yeah, none of the other 30 teams that weren't the Colts or the Eagles made an offer for Carson Wentz. Nobody was interested. The only reason the Colts was because of the Frank Reich, potential reclamation project of Carson Wentz, and they didn't really give up that much.
Sounds like they gave up too much if they were only bidding against themselves.
They
should have just said, "We'll just take them for a 7th, and that'll be fine."
I think it's worth kicking the tires on him. I just don't see Super Bowl and Lombardi trophies and parades heading down Indianapolis. It's just not going to happen.
I'm not sure if I see playoffs, to be quite honest.
Playoffs?
If he's as bad as he was this year, and he could be, maybe that's just what he is now, then there's no way in hell they're making the playoffs, because he was trash.
And the AFC is loaded, too.
He's going from the worst division in the history of ever to the best AFC we've seen ever, probably. This is an incredibly stacked conference right now, something that did not happen. It was pretty much a 3 or 4 horse race throughout the 2000s and 2010s. Now it's like you've got like 7 or 8 teams where you're like, damn, that team is a couple of moves away from winning the Super Bowl. And
the Dolphins went 10-6. No playoffs for them.
No.
Even 10
with 7
games and no playoffs.
Even with an extra wild card, he didn't get in.
Right. Like, if the playoffs weren't expanded, there'd be an 11-win team that was out.
It would have been the Colts.
Yeah, the Colts. Exactly. Meanwhile, the Washington football team with 7 of their wins goes to the playoffs on the NFC side of the bracket.
Got to host a game.
Got to host a game, yes.
And the world was introduced to Taylor Heineke.
Mm-hmm. Which I learned how to spell recently as well. There's a C in there that you wouldn't expect. Let's see. I'll just go up the list, I guess. Cam Newton. What did Cam Newton do? He played like crap this season as well.
Well,
like that's
he got bullied by some brat at his camp.
Oh,
so there was that, but I don't even really think that we need to talk too much about that. Cam Newton handled that situation really well. The kid was trying to chirp at Cam Newton about something, and Cam, legitimately was just like asking the kid a question, and the kid made a fool of himself by trying to, tease the whole situation and get all of his friends to come over. And it's like, okay, but now you're just going to embarrass yourself in front of everybody when you could have just answered the damn question that Cam asked you.
Yeah.
Like, this is a Super Bowl starting quarterback who you're going to
Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, who you're going to chirp at or something, like, really? But so the reason though is that I want to talk about Cam Newton at least briefly is so he talked this week about Bill Belichick and how cool he was, how much Cam really enjoyed playing for him and being in New England. He talked a little bit about this past season, and he played like crap this year, but part of that I think was everything with COVID, from not having an off season to work with his team to actually getting the virus and being sick and missing a couple of weeks with it, and probably never really fully feeling like himself again. A lot of it I think had to do with that. And I don't know if the Patriots are interested in bringing him back this year, but Cam said definitively this week, I'm 100% interested. He is all for coming back and playing in New England again next year if they'll have him.
I think he'll be better if he plays another year in New England. Like he looks so incredibly awful. And like, it's no doubt that all the injuries and stuff have taken a toll.
The offense in general, though, looked awful. Like, it wasn't even just Cam.
Right, yeah.
The receivers didn't look very good. Because Cam actually had a few really nice passes to guys like, what was his name? Jacoby Myers, I think was
Who was their best receiver? Is it Jacoby Myers?
I think it was Jacoby Myers this year was kind of their best. He ended up being
Not
like
exactly
the best from
Randy
a production standpoint. And and there was another guy like Bird or something like that. But like Cam Newton had a few highlight throws to those guys, but those were like the only good plays of the year. And I didn't watch enough exclusively of the Patriots. I mostly saw them when they were shown on NFL Red Zone to say whether that was because Newton, like those were the only good throws by Newton, or those were the only good plays where his receivers actually got open for him. I don't know. I don't know how much of the Patriots' woeful offensive productivity was Newton's fault and how much was the other players' fault and how much was the system. I don't know. I'd be really curious to see another year of him there with a full offseason to work with his teammates.
Yeah, Cam, if you look at his PFF grade, it's actually not that bad given how bad his numbers looked. Like if you look at it's like a 70.9, which isn't great.
No, but
there are
plenty worse.
Yes, there are plenty of starting quarterbacks that have worse numbers than that. And the thing is, like the first two, like you mentioned it, Corey, the first 2 weeks of the season, Cam looked incredible.
Yeah,
like he looked really good against the Dolphins. He threw the ball
pretty well, and he ran the ball really well.
Yeah, and then against the Seahawks, granted, the Seahawks made everybody look amazing,
True.
but he particularly, like physically, he looked really good. And he made he threw deep balls to Julian Edelman that game. Like, I don't care who you're playing. If Julian Edelman's running a deep route and you're able to connect with him, you're doing something okay. But then once he got sick, like, it just seemed like he just never got it back.
It just derailed everything.
Recovered. Yeah, so, don't get me wrong, I don't think Cam Newton is a star anymore. Like, those days are done. He's too physically compromised. I think his throwing motion now, because of some of those shoulder injuries, is going to be too inconsistent to be a Pro Bowl level passer. And I think it's also too much to ask for a soon-to-be 32-year-old quarterback with a lot of mileage on him to go run the ball 15 times a game. So I think he might be able to find a job. But I respect what Cam's doing, though, because he's made plenty of money. He's had probably the most success he's ever going to have. Like his best days are behind him. And he's still unwilling to go out, on bad terms. He's trying to manage the end of his career in such a respectable way when he could easily say, you know what, I'm done. He doesn't want to go out like that. He wants to continue to be a better football player, even if physically he can't do it, to grow as a player mentally. He really seemed to appreciate the opportunity to play under Bill Belichick, which, Belichick's gotten a lot of criticism this year because of what Tampa Bay did with Tom Brady and what the Patriots did not do without Tom Brady. But Belichick's still the premier football mind in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that's even a question. So for Cam to have an opportunity to pick his brain a little bit and to get inside the mind of Bill Belichick can only benefit him. And he embraced that. He wasn't this cocky guy that a lot of people might have presumed that he is because of some stereotypes or some false image of him. He was a humble and willing listener to the greatest football coach of a generation. He didn't just say, hey, I know what I'm doing. He said, this guy can make me better. And that's what he's done.
I do kind of want to mention this kid at the camp. Like, kid running his mouth. Sometimes you just got to shut up, right? Like, you just... I guess it's hard for me to tell somebody to shut up here on a podcast where we're yammering for hours at a time. But, if you're a child, like that's not how you talk to adults. This is why I don't talk much around people sometimes. Just because when I was younger, I used to say whatever nonsense popped into my head at that time. And I got several smacks across the face talking about how stupid that was. And don't say that anymore. So, you learn, you live and you learn, right? That's really all it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same stupid crap between these ears all the time, but not all of it comes out all the time.
I just couldn't imagine having the temerity, the unmitigated gall to show up to a professional athlete and former MVP's football camp that he's
Heisman
running,
Trophy winner.
and to show up there and start talking smack to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's hosting camp for me as just some non-entity snot-nosed kid.
Mm-hmm.
As an MVP, he's doing a favor to me and these other kids, and I'm going to talk smack like I'm better than him?
Yeah.
Like, where does that come from? Like, who raised you?
Exactly. Yeah. So, just whack, shut up. You get on the business end of a couple of those, and, you learn how to act right at some point. I guess we'll just transition somehow to Des Bryant. I didn't put Des Bryant on here, but I think I know why. He doesn't want to play with the Ravens anymore, and he's saying there's no bad blood or anything like that, but it just wasn't a good fit. I'm kind of sad to see him go. I liked having him on the team.
Yeah, I was really. I mean, I'm glad that he finally got his shot back in the league. It obviously didn't really completely work in Baltimore. He did catch two touchdown passes. I think he had 6 receptions total on the year. After being signed mid-season and having to work his way onto the active roster from the practice squad.
There was a COVID scare in the Dallas game. Of course,
there was the COVID scare leading up to the game against the Cowboys. He made it to the pregame warm-ups, and they told him, you've tested positive, and so you can't play today, which was really disappointing because he's going up against his former team. That was the game that he cared about the most on the schedule. So that was a shame. And of course, afterward, he tweeted that, he was done for the year. He was going to hang the cleats for the rest of the year. And then he walked that back. And, it's interesting because Des Bryant had his share of baggage coming into the league. But I appreciate what he seems to be doing with his life off the field. I appreciate that this guy, he can be so emotional that he would, he's so emotional he's going to tweet that before he really thinks things through, but is willing to walk it back. And his comments he made this week as he was talking about, he's not going to come back with the Ravens. He wants to play 2 more years and then retire, but he's not going to do it with the Ravens. It wasn't a good fit, but there's no bad blood. He's made friendships with our organization. He respects the way the Ravens do things. It just wasn't right for him. I can really appreciate that he has, spent the time to really. The way that he talked about it, it was evident that he really has thought this through, top to bottom. Which, I think a lot of people, when you see somebody, tweet such an emotional reaction to something like he did with the COVID-19 thing, you sometimes don't give somebody credit as being capable of thinking through things completely. And so I appreciate seeing that because I think hopefully this may help some people to recognize that, you can be both very emotional and, quote unquote volatile, but also be able to think very critically and be considerate of people and all that.
Yeah, I think that I've noticed it a little bit just observing some of these more mercurial wide receivers in their older years, where you start to appreciate the level of intelligence they have. Like, they're bright guys, and I think a lot of times it gets overlooked because some of the antics and moments of petulance. We think, oh, look at that dumbass over there acting a fool, kicking the kicking net or whatever, and getting beat up by it and then proposing to it like Odell did. But if you listen to Odell in an interview, like, he's a smart dude, and he's wired right. He's really competitive, and it comes out on the field sometimes not in the best ways. But that doesn't mean that these guys aren't worth listening to and aren't worth observing, because you can learn a lot from them as well. I mean, Randy Moss is the same way. He he had some not so great moments, but I think it's safe to say if you've seen Randy Moss on TV, he's fantastic. You know, he's a bright guy. He's enthusiastic. Gets a little worked up sometimes. It happens, but you know, I feel like Dez is in the same boat. Like just even following some of the tweets he's had in the period of time where he wasn't playing football, and you just got a vibe. It's like this guy thinks a little bit differently, and that's cool.
It's a tremendous comeback story too for Dez as well. Like, you know, I think he was just out of the league for 1 year, and then he came back with the Saints, and then tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
Like in the first practice. Did he miss another season in between that and the 2020 season?
I think so, because wasn't the situation with the Saints in 2018?
Yeah, it was, because in 2017 was his last year with the Cowboys, where he didn't play well, and Dak was hating on him for dropping balls all the time. And then 2018, the Saints picked him up mid-season to try to like have somebody play alongside Michael Thomas, and it just unfortunately he got hurt on like the last play of practice, and then he had to, you know, obviously go under the knife for that, and he was in recovery.
And he missed all of 2019.
The previous season. Yeah, and so then he popped up with the Ravens this year, and it was fun. It was fun seeing him on the field. It was fun seeing him throw up the X. Like that's something we hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah. Throw up the X. That was a fun little thing that happened as well.
Yeah, I mean, because Dez was like, I think because his prime was so short due to a lot of the injuries that he suffered, people kind of forget how good he was. He was an incredible wide receiver. Like he was a stud.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then Alex Smith. I think I saw this week how his comeback apparently threw a wrench into the plans of the Washington football team, and that makes me wonder, like, if they didn't want Alex Smith, like, what quarterback in their range of options that were realistic did they want then? Right? They want Dwayne Haskins, right? Turns out he's a bum, and he makes dumb decisions all the time. They got rid of him. Do they want Kyle Allen, right? He's finally done loosening his arm outside of Bank of America Stadium. Turns out he sucks. He also got horribly injured. Yeah. But even when he wasn't horribly injured, he couldn't play. And then there's Taylor Heineke, who was on the practice squad of practice squads. So, you just pick from those guys. What? What? Y'all watch this team, the team. Somebody explain this to me, please.
I don't know, Eric. Do you want to take this, or you want me to take this?
You go ahead.
There's something in there.
Okay.
Because I think you've got more thoughts on this than I do, but I'll say something later.
So my thoughts are a little bit more, not so much about the situation itself. It's more it's kind of a grander scheme of things. But I guess my thoughts on the situation itself. So, Washington goes and they bring in a new administration, shall we say, right? They bring in Ron Rivera and a new coaching staff. Alex Smith is not their guy, right? This is a guy who's eating up a huge chunk of cap space. He's injured. He missed all of 2019. There's no guarantee that he could come back. And even if he can come back, can he actually play at an NFL level? There's no telling that. And so I can see how that would seem like, throwing a wrench. I don't think that Alex Smith said anything wrong about that. I think that he probably explained it pretty much how it was. It threw a wrench in their plans. While, yes, it is absurd to think that their Washington was happy with Haskins or Allen as their start. I mean, to be fair, going into the season, I had some hopes for Haskins. I was the Haskins truther who had to shut up very early in the season when it became clear he sucked. He was not good. But Kyle Allen, we all know that he's not an NFL starter. He is not that guy.
Not that guy.
So, but that doesn't mean that Smith was going to be that guy. It doesn't mean that Smith was going to be better than them. It is possible to be worse than both of those guys. It is as hard as it is to believe. It is actually possible to be worse than Dwayne Haskins. It's hard.
Sure, Nathan Peterman's available.
Nathan Peterman is potentially in that conversation. I don't really know which one is worth, to be quite honest, which says a lot about how much my opinion has changed of Haskins' ability to play. Or maybe it says a lot about Peterman. I don't know. Regardless, I get where Smith is coming from. He's probably right. It probably did throw a wrench, so to speak, in their plans. The question is going to be moving forward from here. What happens, because he's still under contract, I believe, for 2 years, and Washington certainly release him.
2 more years.
Yes.
Wow.
And it's an expensive contract. Washington could absolutely dump him, right? I dumped him in my Madden league, despite the fact that I'm eating some money in cap penalties. Washington could do that, and at this point, it might be in their best interest, because I don't know that Smith should be the starter. I don't know.
Over who?
I think that we could certainly bring somebody in. That would be great. I'd be okay with that. But if it's between Smith and Heineke, I say turn the wheels on Heineke. See what he's got. Smith is no spring chicken. He is physically compromised. Give Heineke a shot. And if he sucks, hopefully next year's draft
no different
class
from
is
all
still
the other
decent.
guys we just mentioned.
Right. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. But I'll get Eric's thoughts before I kind of get into like the holistic thoughts about all this.
Holistic? What is this, like remedies and?
I don't know if that's the right word. It probably isn't, but whatever.
English.
Some natural oils, I'm gonna break those out. So I saw this and I was a little bit surprised, because my feelings as a fan were not anything like what Alex Smith is describing about this throwing a monkey wrench into. Of course, I'm not the one making the plans, but when I saw him come back and play, I was like, holy crap, I can't believe he's actually on the football field again. That's insane. And I said that kind of half excited, half terrified. But
as we all did.
Yeah, and as his family was, as we saw in the crowd, especially as Aaron Donald was just ragdolling him.
Oh my God.
There's no crowd.
Well,
his wife and kids.
Yeah, they were the crowd.
Right.
And they looked terrified. But my speculation of what Smith was talking about has to do with Kyle Allen, because we know that there's a love affair between Ron Rivera and Kyle Allen, despite the fact that Kyle Allen got Ron Rivera unceremoniously fired out of Carolina because he lost to the team. So that's kind of a bit of a head scratcher, but he seemed to like the guy because he insisted on bringing him in, and he clearly wanted Allen to start over Haskins, but Haskins was the first round pick, and so he had to give him some type of a shot. And of course, Haskins proved to be a complete bomb. So I think the plan was Kyle Allen was going to be the guy for the time being. And I don't really see how Alex Smith threw a monkey wrench in the plan, though, because Kyle Allen was playing until he got hurt, and that's when Smith came in. So it's not like Smith disrupted some type of pecking order that they had in mind. He became the emergency starting quarterback after one guy was terrible and another guy got seriously injured. So I'm not sure. Now, again, Smith knows a hell of a lot more about the inner workings of the team than I do. So he could easily be talking about something else. But
I would guess that it probably was more of a maybe some of the people. I mean, obviously at that point, like their hands were tied. Smith was the only real option, but there could have been like an audible sigh, like a damn it, now we got to go with Smith. Like it could have been something like that within the organization that Smith was hearing or sensing.
Yeah, I guess that's possible because, I mean, I thought he was done. I didn't think there was any way he was going to play football again after the injury he had. But he was clearly effective enough to go out there and play professional football. He wasn't good, but he was able to go out there and throw the ball around a little bit. And with 2 years left on his deal, it's like it almost looks heartless to cut him. You know, there's a little bit of a PR thing there.
Almost. It doesn't look almost heartless. It looks evil and completely heartless. The guy risked literally life and limb for your franchise, and you're like, you know what? We're just gonna send you up the road. Goodbye. Like,
yeah, with 2 years left on the deal. So yeah, that probably could be what he's talking about. Where it's like, yeah, well, I've proven that I can at least play football How well, that's up for debate. I don't think it's great, but they can't get rid of me because I'm a hero, and he is. To his credit, he is that. It's
Absolutely.
not BS. He deserves all the credit in the world for what he's done, but he's also put the team in a position where they've got to keep him for the next couple of years unless they want to get slammed. And this is an organization that can't really afford more bad PR. And he's pretty expensive. I mean, he's being paid like a veteran starter because that's what he was paid to be. And that's what he was when they paid him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not that anymore. He's just physically unable to perform at that level anymore.
Yeah.
So I could see how that could be a potential monkey wrench where it's like, well, damn, this guy's going to be on the roster costing this much money. We can't get rid of him. So what do we do? And the option might be he has to start because how do you justify it?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, maybe they should draft somebody. Where are they picking in the draft? Are they picking 23rd?
Not that high. It's like...
Oh, no, there's 14 playoff teams, so 20, I mean, maybe 18 or something like that?
I think it's 19th.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
19.
There's 18 non-playoff teams, and then they were the worst playoff teams, so they would be 19th.
So, in the grander scheme, there's been some people who have reacted to this as, Smith is, he is, there's no way that he wants to be in Washington anymore or something like that. And I don't necessarily get that sense from this. He probably would be okay playing somewhere else if that's how things went down. I do think he wants to play. I've seen some people, say that Jacksonville could be a good landing spot because he could mentor Trevor Lawrence. But Trevor Lawrence is going to start in his first game. Alex Smith, if he's going to stay in the NFL, he wants to play. As far as I can tell, he doesn't want to be on the bench as a mentor. And if that's the role he was relegated to, my inclination is that he would probably not suit up. He just wouldn't come back. I look at this a lot like, a few weeks ago as we were talking about, our predictions on starting quarterbacks for next year. I said, I don't have any concerns about Russell Wilson being in Seattle, and I still don't. And this is the same kind of thing. I don't think that either one of them Russ complaining about the lack of protection he's gotten from his offensive line, Smith semi-complaining about the lukewarm reception he received in the Washington facilities. I don't necessarily view that as these guys are fed up with the situation and they want nothing to do with these teams or even anything really approaching that. I think a lot of people, their perspectives on life have changed over the past year amidst this pandemic. And a lot of people have kind of come to this point where, I'm just going to say what's on my mind. I'm not going to be disrespectful about it, but I'm going to say what's on my mind and let the chips fall where they may. And now it's out in the open. It's almost like when you're really pissed at somebody and you write an email to them, but then you don't send it because it's really just cathartic to get it out. Sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes you really want, that person to understand that you are frustrated, that you're not happy, and why you're frustrated and why you're unhappy. But then you can kind of move on from that. If Russ is not in Seattle next year, it's going to be because Seattle's management is so upset about the fact that Russ did that they decided to trade him. And I think Russ is too good for them to be that petty.
They could run the ball more.
I don't think Russ is upset to the point that he wants to be traded. Likewise, I don't think that Smith is necessarily like, there's no way in hell I want to be back with Washington next year. I just think that, life is too short to leave things unsaid, and people are recognizing that now more than ever as people are dying with things unsaid at astronomical rates. People have a different perspective now, and I think that is really what's going on with some of these athletes. I mean, because I don't think we've ever seen an offseason where so early in it, you've got people voicing their concerns about their current situation, the way this is going. I think that there's got to be something in the air, so to speak, that is causing that to happen now as opposed to any other time in history.
Interesting. Yeah, there was also some sort of beef on Twitter with the Ravens wide receivers about something. I rolled my eyes, frankly. Like we've heard this for 25 years at this point. It's like, what?
Yeah, Marquise Brown was implying that, his poor performance was a product of the fact that he had Lamar Jackson throwing him the ball and not somebody, I guess, better.
Well, if he could catch the damn ball,
I guess big trust no more.
Maybe if you caught the ball like once.
Marquise Brown's a bum. Like he's not good.
I'm so frustrated with Marquise Brown.
He's Rashad Perryman with better branding. He's not good. He can't play. He can't play. He's not good at
damning indictment.
Rashad
Perryman really sucked.
Oh yes, I know.
Marquise Brown's not that bad. He's not great. He's not good, really. But he's not Rashad Perryman.
He pisses me off more than Rashad Perryman does.
Because Rashad Perryman was irrelevant.
Yeah. That's how I feel about Marquise Brown. He's irrelevant except for the fact that I keep seeing him pop up on my timeline whining about something, even though he's terrible at his job.
Oh my God.
Well, if he got open and caught the ball more often, that'd be nice.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We know Lamar's not perfectly accurate, but when the ball is right on the money, Monday Night Football, you have to catch it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's weak sauce. I'm off Marquise Brown. I never really was on. I never really thought he was that special, but he's on the Twitterverse running his mouth, and I'm just like, man, you need to back up, man, because who are you? Lamar Jackson MVP. Who are you?
Yeah, he's going to be running his mouth.
You're a jack,
like his cousin. Without the production that his cousin provided to his team.
Is that actually his cousin, or are you just
yes?
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah. You didn't know that Marquise Brown is actually Antonio Brown's cousin?
Did not know that. There's a lot of Browns out there. I mean, how am I supposed to know they're cousins?
Because that was like one of the big storylines early in 2019. Like after he had that big game in the first game of the season, I think it was it Buffalo or Miami?
Miami. It was Miami.
Against Miami. Like that was like one of the big storylines. Was like, whoa, Antonio Brown's cousin is good.
Yeah, I always heard Hollywood Brown because I knew Hollywood Brown in college. And
I mean, obviously referred to him as Hollywood Brown too, but like some people were also like specifically pointing out that this is Antonio Brown's cousin. So
I guess somehow I didn't catch that in the highlight package. I never heard that. So
interesting.
The more you know. Okay. Well,
yeah, that was the big.
He ain't Antonio. Let's just leave it.
No.
My goodness.
Yeah. Well, do y'all have anything else to add? It's been 2 hours, and this is a light week of topics. So,
Well, relatively few topics, but some of these were like, we need to really kind of dig into the nitty gritty. So
not many questions on the test, but multiple parts.
Yes.
Yeah, we did kind of.
You only have one math problem, but there's 26 parts.
Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, we had our physics tests were like 3 problems, and they had step A through J.
I remember those too, Mr. Benedict.
Yep.
No wonder it
Love
takes
Mr.
the whole
Benedict.
hour.
Hate the format.
I liked those.
I didn't mind the format.
I mean, they made sense, I guess, for that because a lot, it was step by step for like a larger issue. Like it was all part of the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a math problem where like it's question 1 is matching, but then you have like 26 completely different and unrelated matching problems.
Or, at least it's not like one of my physics exams in college, which was 20 multiple choice questions. I remember I knew it was our final exam. I remember I knew 6 of the 20 questions. So I filled in the 6 answers. I put C for the other 14. I packed up my stuff and left.
Jeez.
I'm not sitting there all day for. I have no idea.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we kind of covered like all of Major League Baseball during the Kevin Mather discussion. Kind of went around the world a little bit on that. Oh boy. So I guess that wraps up this week's show. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for listening on. We have a live stream on Facebook right now.
We do.
Does anybody listen to that?
Thank
those people who clicked on it by mistake or on purpose.
I'm not sure. We at least had a listener at some point because it mentions there,
listener.
but it doesn't always pop up with like this person is watching when somebody tunes in. So there may have been more than one person who tuned in.
Well, I'm just glad we had a listener. So if you are a listener or the listener out there, please feel free to reach out to us. Send us an email, thesportsballers@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter @sportsballers18. Follow us individually on Twitter. Corey's @Corey Puffett. Eric is @Quagmire67. And I'm @Evan_Ash13. You can find this podcast wherever you are listening to it right now.
In fact, on Apple Podcasts, so we haven't gotten a new review since March of last year. We'd love to have another one, but we did this week go up from 8 reviews to 9 reviews, and we're still at 5.0 out of 5. So we've had an additional 5-star review this week.
Oh, we got a rating this week.
Yeah.
Okay. So on all the podcast platforms out there, please leave a rating. And if you leave a review as well, we will read it on the show. Because obviously we have time and we don't have many of those. Also, if you made it this far in the podcast, please hit subscribe. So you will be, the new podcast will be posted right into your phone or various other device as soon as it's posted on, I think we use SoundCloud, right?
Yeah, we put it on SoundCloud. With Apple, it goes up immediately every time. The other services, sometimes there's a brief delay. Okay. Especially Google. Google sometimes like the next day is when it finally pops up.
Okay. Does anybody y'all want to shout out before we get out of here?
No shout out, just a little bit of quick breaking news. Devin Booker is replacing Anthony Davis as a reserve for the Western Conference representatives for the All-Star game.
Okay. Well,
there you go.
There we go. Just want to remind everybody, please wear a mask and please wash your hands. Please exercise physical distancing. Please bathe. Tell the people you love that you love them. And just exercise some kindness as well. I think that would be good to remind everybody, in the times that we live in. Some people like Kevin Mather and, the 45th president of the United States can be a real jackass. And, don't be that guy. So, for Corey, for Eric, I'm Evan. This has been the Sports Ballers Podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next week.